Alto Goldfield is your typical shy boy with autistic tendencies who was lucky enough to get admitted into the Ordiger Royal Magic Academy on scholarship. Ever since his admission, Alto aced his first year and passed every subject he offered. However, life takes a weird turn for him towards the end of his first year. Although Alto's still brilliant, he has one major problem, and that is the inability for him to form contact with a familiar. As time goes on, Alto gets left behind by his colleagues as they make contact with amazing familiars and can summon them at will. Nearing the end of his first year, Alto risks repeating his current class if he fails to make contact with a familiar. With little time on his side, Alto gets desperate and begins to explore other illegal ways to summon a familiar that would stay with him. Little did he know the kind of creature he was about to bring to this cold, cruel world. On a bright Monday or Tuesday, Alto attends school as usual. The day goes normal for the others except him. After his classes, he's seen in his homeroom teacher's office to check out his test scores. The teacher commends him for keeping his good grades. However, he tells Alto that he has to summon and make contact with a familiar if he's to be promoted to his next class. Hearing this, Alto gets really upset. The teacher, however, calms him down and tells him forming contact with a familiar isn't that big a deal if he can get it right. Alto thanks his teacher for the information and heads out of his office. In the hallway, he runs into his longtime friend, Lilia, who seems to have had a crush on him forever. He tells her about his teacher's advice and gives her a sullen look on his face. Lilia tries her best to lighten up his mood. However, Alto knows he has to do something quick and fast if he's to be in the same class as Lilia next year. He thanks Lilia for listening to him and heads to the library to search for any text that could help him out. After walking a few meters into the library, a very old book falls on his head. Alto picks up the book and checks around it only to find out it's an old book for summoning magic. He checks out a particular magic circle and gets excited to try it out. After drawing the circle on the floor, he recites the spell and summons the infamous demon, Vermeil. Now Vermeil isn't like any normal demon. She's a lady with all the fleshy parts intact. Not only that, she's as naughty as they come. After meeting her master for the first time, she pins poor Alto on the ground and forces him to gaze at her huge chest. Alto summons the courage to look past her fleshy body and orders her to be his familiar. Suddenly, a contract is formed and Vermeil sucks in the first batch of Alto's mana through a kiss. Poor Alto faints after getting his lips sucked by a 304 demon. When she's done with him, she still pins him on the ground and rubs his stomach. Eventually, Alto gets tired and tells her to snap out of it. Later on, he begs her to put on some clothes so they can go out the following day. Vermeil checks the wardrobe and finds some small, very fitted clothes. She puts them on and sits with her master for their first discussion. To begin, she commends her master for having the power to summon her in the first place. She also lets him know that his mana is a very potent one. That's one of the things that drew her to him in the first place. Alto checks to confirm that she's a demon before allowing her to touch him. Then, he asks her why she won't break their contract and run away from him. Vermeil bursts his bubbles and tells him she's staying because she's been trapped in that book quite a long time and he was the one who saved her. Hearing this, Alto asks her if she was a bad guy in her previous life, but Vermeil just laughs and passes the night with him. The following day, Alto presents his familiar, who was disguised to be a human, to his teacher. His teacher didn't believe him initially, but Vermeil showed him the contract sign on her breasts and forced him to believe her. The teacher gives up and passes Alto. At least now he can be promoted to the other class. Following this realization, Alto and his familiar both attend classes together. There, Vermeil keeps on sitting on Alto's lap during class, which distracts everybody. The teacher tries to butt in, but Vermeil plays psychology on him. Lilia, on the other hand, keeps fuming at Vermeil for being so close to her dear Alto. She loses her shit and shouts at both of them in class. The teacher punishes her for that by giving her detention. After class that day, Lilia finds Alto and his demon fondling each other as usual and asks Alto who the strange woman is. Alto recalls what Vermeil told him yesterday about humans hating demons. Alto lies and tells Lilia that Vermeil is just a human familiar. This annoys Lilia so much that she challenges Alto to a magic duel. The loser gets to do whatever the winner wants. Vermeil smiles at the opportunity to finally settle a score with Lilia and accepts the duel. In the next scene, Lilia sets up the arena for their duel and summons her familiar, which is a wind spirit, to help her out. She creates a large typhoon and sends it towards Alto. However, Vermeil stops the spell from attacking her and shocks Lilia. Now that it's her turn, she gets into Lilia's head and forces her to surrender to Alto. Lilia loses the duel immediately and asks Alto what he'll want her to do for him. Alto thinks about things and forces Lilia to be friends with Vermeil. The two girls, though unlikely to become friends, shake hands just to satisfy their love interest. That night, Vermeil tells Alto about Lilia's love for him, but our poor boy still didn't figure it out. Well, she takes her mind off it and goes in for some mana regeneration instead. After getting her usual dose of mana, Alto asks her why she's so bent on draining his mana. Vermeil tells him she's taking the mana because she needs it to return to her former form. Alto gets very worried and asks her why his mana couldn't summon better familiars. Vermeil tells him not to worry and instead, he should be proud that his mana is delicious to a strong demon like her. He also lets her know that if he doesn't like the kissing, she could get mana in other more direct ways. The following day, Alto and his colleagues begin the first term in their second year. On his way to class, Alto Loki shows Vermeil off to his colleagues. As they walk through the yard full of students, a dragon familiar gets violent and goes on a rampage. The dragon heads towards Vermeil to attack her. However, Vermeil just smiles and flicks the dragon to another planet. An hour later, the new second-year students, including Alto, gather around to hear their headmaster's speech. During the speech, the headmaster tells the students to remain steadfast in their studies as they would be doing double work this time around. As the speech goes on, Alto's colleagues keep staring at Vermeil's breasts in admiration. After the speech, the students attend their first class in the second year. Led by a grandma, their first class covers summoning magic, and the grandma gives them a brief demonstration to illustrate such magic. Up next, the students get into their next class to learn about spell circles. As the class goes on, Lilia and her familiar keep staring at Vermeil and Alto as they are too close to each other. After class, Alto makes the two girls walk together to achieve friendship. While at it, Rex the Dragon Rider and his friend, whose dragon Vermeil beat earlier that day, show up to take revenge on Alto for toying with their dragon earlier. Alto and Lilia get very scared to face such an infamous character in their school. Vermeil, on the other hand, keeps a straight face and asks for some meaning to Rex's name. Alto tells her Rex is one of the most powerful mages in the school. Vermeil then acts funny and distracts Rex and his buddy so they don't see Alto sneaking up behind them. When he gets to their blind spot, Alto summons some ice magic and traps Rex and his buddy inside a magic iceberg. This iceberg only holds Rex and his buddy for just a little while. Then, Rex gets serious and summons his familiar, which is a dinosaur, and asks Vermeil to apologize for her wrongdoing. Vermeil remains silent and waits for Rex to attack. When he does, she returns Alto's golden mana to him and lets him go wild. Alto summons a large enough iceberg that completely freezes the dinosaur in place. Rex and his buddy are forced to surrender. Vermeil makes fun of them before returning to her master's dorm. There at the dorm, she discusses a few random things with Alto, who begs her not to do illegal things. Moving on, Alto tells Vermeil that he plans on making it to the Platinum Square Mages, which are considered the best mages in all of their land. Vermeil sees the determination in his eyes and promises to help him achieve his dreams. Following their discussion, Vermeil removes her clothes in preparation for another mana boost. This time, she sucks Alto's meat and causes him to scream out loud. The following day, everyone convenes in the school's hallway. While Lilia scolds Vermeil for doing a number of things to her man, Marx, the school's goofy kid, and his entourage, Cheryl, shows up. After the introductions, all four students get to the headmaster's office. The headmaster informs them that they've been selected to be members of the student council representative for their level. Sadly for them, only one of them can be chosen. To get the right person for the job, the headmaster tells them he'll be pitting against each other and sending them to the forest nearby to retrieve a rare fairy flower. The person who gets the flower wins the challenge and becomes the student council representative. The students accept their quest and are sent into the forest. There, Mark summons his bug familiar, hoping it would get him close to the flower. However, his bug familiar leads him to a carnivorous plant that eats him alive. Cheryl gets towards him and helps him down. Sadly for him, this means he's disqualified. Alto and Lilia continue further into the forest and find the rare flower on top of a small hill. Under the hill, they find a sick dragon sleeping there. Lilia takes out her invisibility potion and tells Alto that she'll drink it, turn invisible, and then sneak past the dragon unseen. The only loophole in this plan is that the invisibility potion doesn't work with clothes on. So, Lilia, even though she's invisible, removes all her clothes right in front of her crush. Anyways, she finishes business and inches towards the sleeping dragon, watching her every step. While she's away, Alto asks Vermeil about the mana she gave him the previous day. Vermeil explains all she can about the mana and pins him down again to get another dosage of mana. Alto, being the weakling he is, couldn't do anything about it. When she's done, Alto wakes the dragon up and forces it to come to him. When it's in their trap, he gives Vermeil the OK signal to unleash hell on the dragon. After taking care of the dragon, Lilia finally lays her hands on the flower. She gets down the hill and gives it to Alto after admitting defeat. Just then, her invisibility potion wears off and Alto could see her goodies. Lilia becomes so embarrassed that she throws the flower away. Cheryl picks the flower up and becomes the winner of the competition as time runs out that instant. Alto and Lilia congratulate Cheryl for winning and then promise to get each other in their next competition. Later that day, Alto takes Vermeil out on an ice cream date. Alto gets to see the other side of Vermeil as she enjoys some parfait ice cream. The two walk and talk about their past life as they munch on their food. Alto keeps wondering just how much of Vermeil he doesn't know. As he's about to ask another question, a group of Dargon riders fly above them. Everyone stops to admire the almighty Lady Chris and her other 4 friends as they grace the skies with their delightful dragons. Vermeil says a few undermining things about them and then gives Alto some of her parfait to eat. Alto's face lights up as he takes a bite of Vermeil's drink. A few hours later, Alto joined his people for some PE. After their first session, they settled down to rest and discuss random things as usual. This time, Marx gets chatty with his groups, reminding them just how powerful and strong the student council members are. It's said that these students are all gold square students with very good potential at attaining platinum. Not even the professor can touch the students. Vermeil notices her master getting depressed, so she puts her breasts in his mouth to cheer him up. Lilia sees this and pushes Vermeil away so she doesn't kill Alto. Moments later, Lilia and Cheryl are seen changing in the women's room. As she puts on her new clothes, Lilia complains about Vermeil and her closeness to Alto. She mentions all the amazing things Vermeil has done and suspects that she's hiding something from them. Cheryl reminds Lilia just how much she may be into Alto, and also tells her to be upfront with her feelings before it's too late. Lilia gets very embarrassed and urges Churi to keep quiet before someone hears her. In the meantime, Vermeil gets into the boys' locker room to search for Alto. After freaking everyone out, she finally finds Alto and returns to the hallway with him. Lilia joins them and continues complaining about Vermeil for her strange actions. Alto just keeps mute and walks with the 2 girls. After a long argument, Alto finally begs them to lead a peaceful life. Before they get too deep into their discussion, the 5 members of the student council walk by. Everyone walks by the side to create space for the almighty student council members. Even Alto and the powerful Vermeil do so. As they pass by, one of the ladies checks out Vermeil. In the next scene, Vermeil and Alto take a bath together. Alto, upon noticing Vermeil's presence, freaks out and pulls his back against the bathroom wall. Vermeil gets too close for comfort and offers herself for Alto's use. After promising to make his dreams come true the second time, Vermeil sucks out some of Alto's mana. At that moment, Chris from the student council calls for a meeting with Rex and a few other goons serving under her to punish Rex for losing against a little boy like Alto. To start the punishment, she kicks Rex around the place until he starts bleeding. When he regains consciousness, Rex insults and annoys Chris again. Chris smiles at Rex's bravado and takes a sudden interest in Alto. She promises to confront him one of these days and kicks around more. The following day, Rex is rushed to the hospital. Alto and the others stop by to check up on him as they're surprised at how he got his injuries. When asked about how he got his injuries, Rex lies and tries to sweep the matter under the carpet. However, Alto gets really curious and eventually finds out that Chris did this to his friend, Rex. Angry, Alto summons Vermeil and urges her to follow him to the student council. When they get there, he challenges Chris to a duel which she accepts wholeheartedly. To begin the duel, Alto kisses Vermeil and surrenders his golden mana to her. Lilia, who was watching the duel from a safe place, loses her shit as she gets jealous. On the other side of the school, Rex is called by his buddy to come watch the match of his life. The duel begins and Chris attacks the duo with a fireball. As expected, Vermeil takes the hit and tells her to do better. This time, Chris sends more fireballs at them and weakens Vermeil a bit. Alto steps in to help, but Chris's fireballs are too much for them to handle. At one point, Alto uses some powerful magic attack to limit Chris. Chris takes the hit and decides to go all out. This time, she summons her dragon familiar and trashes the arena with the fireballs. Chris pauses her attacks one time and speaks a few demeaning words to Alto and his people. This gets Vermeil very pissed. So, she cooks up a plan and tells it to Alto so they can work together to bring the proud girl down. Chris continues sending down fireballs to burn Vermeil and Alto. Nonetheless, Vermeil takes the hits and lets her guy get angry enough to fight the wicked person they're fighting. She holds Alto down and this time lets him unleash all of his mana into a single magic attack. Chris tries to stop them from activating the attack, but it's already too late as Alto has already created a large boulder coming from the ground and rising towards Chris. On seeing the boulder, Chris creates another series of fireballs and breaks it down. Thinking she's won, Chris gets the shock of her life when she sees Alto and Vermeil climbing the little pieces of floating rocks near her. Before she could blink, Vermeil and Alto were already behind her. At that point, Rex stops watching the fight as he thinks Alto and his familiar will lose against Chris. On the contrary, Alto and his familiar actually manage to pin down the almighty Chris, forcing her to surrender to defeat. The whole school erupts in happiness as they finally see the end of the impulsive Chris. A few moments after the fight, girls start flocking around Alto to ask him about the fight he just had with Vermeil. Lilia gets very jealous this time and picks up a stone to beat up some girls. Thankfully, Cheryl was nearby to stop her from doing that. Along the line, the school's favorite professor, Professor Obsidian, shows up to scold Alto for challenging a senior to a fight. Alto tries his best to speak for himself, but Obsidian lets him know he's proud of him for winning the fight. After saying all he had to say, Obsidian takes his leave and the girls flock all around him. Elsewhere, Rex finds Chris cleaning the schoolyard. He gets really shocked to see the person he once feared greatly doing something beneath her. To make matters worse, Chris apologized for hurting him in the past. Rex collects the broom from her and helps her sweep the ground. By nightfall, Vermeil sneaks into Alto's room and tries to steal some of his mana. Alto senses her coming and wakes up. He sits Vermeil down and warns her never to startle him like that ever again. In her defense, Vermeil tells Alto that he looked so hot and vulnerable in his sleep. Alto gets very shy again and recoils in surprise when Vermeil comes in for another kiss. This time, Alto tells her to stop and kiss him only if she's in love with him. Vermeil calms him down and confesses her fake love for him just so she could suck some mana again. The following day, Vermeil glows on her way to class. Alto, on the other hand, not so much. Nonetheless, he takes a detour to Obsidian's office to ask him a few questions. After getting his attention, he asks Obsidian if a demon can truly fall in love with a human. Obsidian, though he finds this question a bit strange, answers it. He opens a book and tells Alto that demons only pretend to love humans because they want their mana. Alto suddenly gets the impression that that's what Vermeil is after, his mana. At dinner, Vermeil notices her master deep in his thoughts as he doesn't touch his food. She asks him about it and Alto stutters a few times before speaking up. He asks her to tell him the truth. Is she with him just for his mana or was she truly in love with him? Vermeil smiles and hugs her master dearly. She asks Alto why he's asking such an absurd question. Alto tells her it's because she's always trying to drain her mana. Vermeil tells him she has no choice but to drain his mana as that's the only way she can exist. She then kisses Alto again and this time refrains from draining his mana. She withdraws for a little while again and tries to kiss Alto again. This time, Alto pushes her away. The following day in school, Alto meets with Obsidian to apologize for troubling him the previous day. Obsidian asks him why he asked the question and Alto tells him he was just curious. Obsidian explains a few things about love and women to Alto, which later turns out to be cringe, and then leaves for another room. In the next scene, Obsidian enters a small room to meet a female student waiting there for him. There, the student confesses her love for Obsidian and offers herself up to be used by the professor. The professor changes his face and hugs the student. He returns the feelings to her and injects her with a very strange substance. Hours later, the student's ice magic goes out of control and freezes herself in the room. The following day, word about the student's comatose state circulated at the school. The student, Emma, is a Silver Square student and was reported to have been in that same state for hours before she was rescued by some other students. The student council members suspect someone to be behind these covert attacks as this isn't the first case. Instead of doing something about it, the council members get more worried about their president, Chris. In the meantime, Alto measures Vermeil's height for some class projects they have going on. As expected, Vermeil gets curious and teases Alto for having such weird instruments in his house. Alto ignores her and returns to his notes to write his findings there. Apparently, his class is on an assignment by his teacher to measure every inch of his familiar's body and write a report about them. Alto continues writing on his paper as he explains a few things to Vermeil. Vermeil, on the other hand, holds Alto's hands and places them on her breast. Alto gets very shy and embarrassed and starts shaking, as usual. What the two don't know is that Lilia and Cheryl are just outside their window spying on them. Lilia has her familiar tell her all the vile things Vermeil was doing to her Alto. After hearing them, Lilia gets understandably pissed and decides to check things out herself. She removes her clothes and drinks her invisibility potion just so she can sneak into Alto's room unnoticed. Alto, however, struggles to get the exact measurements of Vermeil's humongous breasts, as the tape rule was too small. Lilia gets close enough and sneaks into the room while invisible. Even though she's invisible, she's not intangible and can still be touched. At one point, Alto nearly caught her, but thankfully, plot armor kept him from doing so. After all the stressful measurements, Vermeil settles down to discuss Alto's dreams. She commends him for taking down Chris and moving one step closer to his goal. Alto tells her she's the only one to thank for her and also promises to be by her side always. Vermeil writes down a few interesting things about Alto and follows him out. In another part of the school, Rex gets his revenge on Chris for being bad to him. Only this time, he's possessed by some dangerous demon. Before the fight intensifies, a little insight is given into Rex's younger life. Apparently, the first ever familiar he summoned was a strange egg. Proud of his newfound power, Rex hugged and loved the egg with his whole heart. Rex was under the impression that the egg would hatch into his own dragon if he took care of it enough. The only person who believed in him back then was the super genius Chris, who was very fascinated by Rex and his familiar. Ever since his encounter with her that day, the two have been best friends ever since. Fast forward to the present day, Alto takes Vermeil to the supermarket to get groceries for a meal they have to prepare. Vermeil checks out one of the beautiful cakes in the cake store behind her and asks Alto to get some for her. Alto checks his wallet and discovers that he's a brokey. He tells Vermeil that he can't get her cakes just because he's short on cash. Vermeil throws a tantrum and swallows in her sorrows. This gets to Alto and he promises to get her cake. Vermeil gets so happy that she kisses Alto in public. Alto pushes her back and asks her not to get too personal with him in public. Vermeil gets even more interested in Alto and kisses him intensely this time. While at it, Rex's buddy shows up gasping for breath and asks Alto and Vermeil to come help his brother. Hearing this, Alto and Vermeil immediately head towards Rex to see what's up. Rex, however, keeps on beating the living crap out of Chris. With his eyes red from anger and his body hard as a rock, Rex shoulders all of Chris's attacks as he inches closer and closer to her. He kicks her in the stomach and summons some powerful earth magic that throws her several feet in the air. When he's done with her, he picks her up and stares into her face. Chris calls his name one more time and this seems to have an effect on him. Just as he's about to take her out completely, Alto and the others show up. They tried to speak some sense into his head, but unfortunately, Rex was already far gone. Alto picks Chris up and asks Rex if he was the one who really hurt Chris. After confirming it was him, Alto decides to get serious with Rex. Rex, on the other hand, gets even stronger and summons his hidden golem to beat down his enemies. Alto gets ready to use his powers on Rex, but then he's stopped by another member of the student council. This time, the lady rushes towards the golem and uses her judgment sword to slice it into pieces. The lady, who's later revealed to be Elena Kimberlite, delivers judgment to Rex and forbids him from attacking them further. Now that the trouble is gone, Elena walks close to Chris and demeans her for allowing such a low-tier student like Rex to defeat her. At that instant, Rex gets back up and tries to fight a second time. However, the fatigue makes him collapse. Before leaving, Elena asks Vermeil if she knows anything about the power Rex used. Vermeil stands aloof and allows things to be. The following day, Chris and the other student council members organize a meeting to discuss the perpetrator injecting strange substances in students and turning them into monsters. Chris barges out of the meeting halfway and angrily walks away from her subordinates. Elsewhere, Alto and his people all stare at the bronze circulation exam application. Lilia teases Alto a little and tells him to win the event on his first try so he can brag about things to Rex when he wakes up. Vermeil gets a little tired and asks for permission to go rest in Alto's room. After she's gone, Lilia gets wild and finally gets her chance to be alone with Alto, the love of her life. After getting permission to leave, Vermeil takes a walk around the schoolyard to think about the strange power she sensed the previous day. While at it, she runs into Obsidian and introduces herself. Obsidian also introduces himself and tries to fool Vermeil with his facade. Vermeil sees through his BS and calls him out on his crimes. Obsidian tries to bluff and turn her attention away from things, but Vermeil tells him to quit trying to fool her. She's the real deal and he may continue doing whatever he wants. However, he should never touch her Alto or he'll be in very big trouble. Obsidian follows and asks her if she would tell Alto about him. Vermeil tells him she doesn't care enough to do so. Obsidian laughs menacingly and gets a bad idea in his head. Vermeil turns her back on Obsidian and continues to do her thing. Obsidian sneaks very close to her back and injects her with the strange substance. Before Vermeil knew it, her body began to react violently to the substance. Lilia keeps getting closer to Alto and even orders him to undress for her. When Alto refuses to do so, she holds his hand and sees his contract. At that point, the contract insignia glows up, alerting Alto that something is very wrong with Vermeil. At that moment, all members of the student council sense the dangerous mana emanating from the schoolyard. Everyone gets very scared as the mana belongs to a demon. Alina gets her sword and rushes to the point of origin. On her way there, however, she's attacked by some talismans who threaten to block her way. A few minutes after she's injected with the strange substance, Vermeil finishes her transformation. She's now a full demon and even tried to attack her creator. Obsidian stands near her smiling and laughing at his own creation. Alto, however, runs as fast as he can to get to his familiar before she completely loses herself. Vermeil keeps shouting and screaming at herself as she loses her humanity with every passing second. Obsidian creates some magic chains and ties her down to the ground, laughing maniacally. Alto arrives on the scene shortly and gets close to his familiar. Lilia joins him and keeps asking weird questions. Alto faces Obsidian and asks for an explanation. Obsidian welcomes them to their doom and uses his magic chains to aggravate Vermeil more. Alto still refuses to believe his eyes as he asks his sensei for an explanation he wishes to hear. Obsidian reveals his true self and tells them he's the man behind all the tragedy befalling the school. Alto's eyes open wide as he realizes the one person he trusted the most turned out to be the school's worst enemy. Obsidian laughs out loud and urges Vermeil to go on a rampage. Unable to take it, Alto screams loudly and exposes his golden mana to Vermeil. Vermeil in turn collects the mana and breaks herself free from the chains. She takes a look at her captor and rushes to attack him. Alto gets in the way and takes the hit for Obsidian. Vermeil realizes that she's completely ripped Alto's heart out of his chest with her own hands. Just then, the demon herself gets into a trance and begins recalling her life before Alto. She was trapped in a deep limbo with no hope of ever getting out. Just when she gave up hope, Alto opened the door to a new reality for her. It was at that point that she realized that she actually loved Alto. She screams out in frustration and faces Obsidian. Obsidian, who is still on his craze, shifts back as Vermeil launches herself towards him. Alto wakes up that instant and hugs the monster, Vermeil. This touches her so much that she completely gets back to normal and starts crying. Alto says his goodbyes and collapses on the floor. Vermeil holds him in his hands and decides to sacrifice herself just to save Alto's life. Lilia watches Vermeil kiss her man and restores his heart with his own golden mana. Obsidian, after witnessing all that happened before him, gets even more crazy and throws a fit for being so useless. He takes out his injection and injects himself with the strange substance. This substance changes his physiology and turns him into a demon hybrid monster. Now that he's stronger, he believes he can stand a chance against a real demon like Vermeil. Vermeil waits for him to finish his speech and destroys him in one attack. Obsidian cannot believe his eyes as his body falls down. He detaches himself from his golem and tries to escape. Unfortunately for him, Chris was already on her dragon, ready to stop him. She sends him back to the ground where Vermeil finishes the mission. With Obsidian now fully knocked out, she promises not to kill Obsidian as Alto had previously saved his life. As morning dawns, Alto wakes up with his new heart. Lilia rushes towards him and hugs him tightly. Alina also ends her fight with the dangerous talisman and sheathes her sword. Shortly afterwards, Alto discusses with Vermeil. Vermeil gives Alto a genuine smile and tells him the truth. To save his life, Vermeil had transferred her own heart into Alto's chest. Now that he lives with her heart, his life is hers and she is his. If Alto dies, she dies, and if she dies, Alto dies. Alto opens his eyes in surprise as he wonders if that is even possible. Initially, he scolds Vermeil for acting that way to him and wishes she never did such a thing. Vermeil, however, tells him it's already too late as the deed is done. Following the events that happened that night, Obsidian was taken to prison. Rex and the other comatose students woke up from their slumber, and Vermeil began ghosting Alto. For a few days, she'd only talk to him when it was time to transfer mana to him. One night, Alto gets tired of all the silence and confronts her about it. Vermeil tells him she's like that to him because she's an ugly and vile monster who only cares about herself. She tells Alto to keep his cool and wait for just a few decades till she's out of her hair. Alto stands up and kisses Vermeil for the first time in a long time. Vermeil is shocked to realize that Alto has kissed her for real. Alto pins her to the wall this time and lets her know that he loves her for what he did. Then, he rushes out from the embarrassment. Vermeil, on the other hand, takes a few deep breaths as she realizes her master could actually be in love with her for real. Later that night, Vermeil wakes up and sits on Alto, who is fast asleep. As Alto mouths some things from his sleep, she extends her hand to touch him. However, she recoils immediately after she senses some weird words coming from Alto's mouth. The following day, Alto returns to school without Vermeil. Before they start class, he finds the girls mourning Obsidian. As for the boys, they were all sad that Alto didn't come to school with Vermeil. I guess they missed her big heart. Anyways, a bunch of them approach Alto to ask him about Vermeil. Alto lies and tells them she's at home resting from all the heavy fighting. Thankfully, the boys believe the lie and let him be. Alto then starts thinking of the treats to get his Vermeil on his way back home. In the next scene, Vermeil is seen reflecting on her thoughts on a walkway facing the sea. Lilia finds her looking gloomy and decides to cheer her up. She surprisingly finds Vermeil in a depressed state, and this wasn't the one she was used to seeing. Lilia immediately begins thinking Vermeil did something to Alto. She confronts Vermeil about it, but Vermeil tells her she really did something weird to him. Lilia calms herself and allows Vermeil off the hook for now. Vermeil looks up and asks Lilia why she's not scared of her. Lilia tells her she doesn't have to be afraid of her as long as she's not willing to harm Alto. Vermeil covers her head in shame as she remembers her horrible form back then. Just then, Lilia explains just how Alto really feels to her, telling her that she has to learn more about her master the more. Vermeil gets the memo and smiles at her new friend as she smiles. That night, she returns to Alto's dorm and finds him pacing and worried sick about her. She calls his attention and thanks him for still letting her stay at his home despite the bad things she did to him. Alto smiles and tells her it's all okay. Still, Vermeil stutters and tries to make up a good apology. In the end, she confesses her feelings for Alto. Alto smiles and thanks his stars that he's lucky enough to be with the best demon he's ever known. He inches closer to her and holds her hands as his familiar. Then, he urges her to lean on him and eat some of the desserts he bought for her. However, Vermeil inches closer to him and urges him to kiss her. Alto gets embarrassed for a little while and then gets close enough to kiss her. Alto plants the softest kiss ever seen in anime on Vermeil's lips, and they get to sleep with smiles on their faces. The next day, Alto wakes early and gets ready for school. He shows Vermeil the uniform he picked for her earlier, and she tries it on. Even though he got the biggest size for her, Vermeil's big chest still didn't fit in it. Alto urges her to manage the clothes as they get prepared for school properly. A few dozen miles away, Lawlight and his partner, Helioter, both Platinum Square members, attack a holy church to steal an artifact. Being the savages they are, they eliminate any and everybody who attacked them. At that moment, Alto and his familiar arrive at school. The boys, after seeing Vermeil, rush over to greet Alto for taking good care of his familiar. After the short celebration, one of the dudes approaches Alto and the others. He reminds them of the bronze exam that's to happen in a few days' time and tells them to prepare well for it. Alto and his familiar thank the guy for his help and sneak to a corner to have some time alone. After getting their alone time in the library, Vermeil literally grapes Alto for a few minutes before returning to the classroom. A few minutes into settling down, Alto Goldfield is given a surprise visit from the whole Student Union Council. In spite of the recent events that happened between Chris and Alto, Alto is summoned to face the council and answer for his crimes. As they get back to the room, there are a few minutes of silence in the room. Later on, Alto speaks up and asks for the reason he was summoned. Alina starts by explaining the situation at hand. So it turns out that Obsidian has escaped from his jail cell and is at large currently, and she suspects that he was helped by a covert group of powerful mages. Ever since his escape, they've been pointing out suspects and interviewing them. Hearing this, Alto lets his guard down for a moment as there's no way they all think he's a suspect. Eventually, he gets the shock of his life when Alina asks him to divulge what he's hiding. Vermeil suddenly gets some murderous vibe emanating from Alina. However, she couldn't do anything at the moment as there was some kind of restraining magic around the room. Alto tries to tell a lie to the student council. However, Vermeil tells him not to lie about things. Alto takes a deep breath and tells everyone in the room that Vermeil is a good demon who has only helped him ever since she was summoned. Before the others could say anything, he begins explaining several things. After hearing all he had to say, Alina, who is the acting president, invites Alto to join the Student Council Union and become the youngest executive there. There's some protest from the others, but Alina has already made up her mind to let them join them. She turns to Alto and waits to hear his answer. Alto repeats the question and asks to know if they want him there just to keep an eye on him. Alina answers and tells him that she truly wants him there as he's proved himself worthy to be amongst them after taking down Chris in the duel. She makes Alto believe there are no strings attached to her wanting him there on their team. Alto joins the student council and heads out of the office to continue his day. Up next, Alto chills out with his colleagues Lilia, Marx, and Cheryl on an outdoor bench. After hearing about his recent promotion, The others are psyched at the news. Lilia tries to get to the bottom of things by asking Alto the real reason he's there. Alto lies and tells her it's because they found something great in him. Thankfully, she backs down and congratulates her friend. That evening, Vermeil finds her master spacing out and asks him about things. Alto tells her he's worried about the student council members knowing about her real identity. Vermeil lets him know that it's fine as long as they don't stalk him too much. She then tells Alto that he actually had no choice but to tell Alina the truth. Had he told a lie, Alina would have sliced his head clean off his neck. Alto sighs and then mentions a few more of his worries. He gets into his thoughts and explains to Vermeil that he really needs to get stronger so he can protect Vermeil, whom he loves so much. Vermeil smiles and walks towards him. She promises to help him get stronger and then unbuttons his shirt. Alto lets out a cry of joy or sorrow as he allows Vermeil to take advantage of him. When she's done with him, Vermeil stands tall and smiles over Alto's body. At that instant, Alina is seen staring at a statue of Mother Mary in a church. She recalls the moment Alto told her the truth and makes a sinister smile. She takes out her sword and cuts the head of the statue before leaving the church. Alto and his familiar head out of their dorm to look for the members of the student council to learn a thing or two from them. Alto approaches the girls' quarters and walks in on Jessica, Alina, and Chris changing their clothes. There's a loud pause for a second and Jessica speaks out. Alto's punished for his wrongdoing and then made to stand in front of the girls to discuss his stuff. After the other members arrive, Alina shows them a petri dish housing the talisman she fought earlier. She explains the complexity of the talisman and lets the others know that the Institute of Magic Records doesn't have it in their archives. As such, there's nobody alive who can decipher such complex magic. Alina breaks the bad news to the others. Their enemy may be a group filled with platinum squares. At that instant, Lawlight and Heliodor return to their base camp and find their other colleague, Kohakumiya, waiting for them. Kohaku scolds Lawlight for destroying the paper doll she made for him. However, Lawlight laughs a little and apologizes for his carelessness. Kohaku looks past his nonchalance and asks him how he got past Heaseful, the lord of the Gilded Tower which they raided earlier. Lawlight says he just killed them and took whatever they were looking for. Kohaku frowns her face and lets the spoiled Lawlight go. Lawlight calls his partner, Heliodor, and heads out with her. Up next, Alto dreams about a young Vermeil crying. As he extends his hand to her, he suddenly changes realities and finds himself in front of a shining woman. The woman shows him the two paths Vermeil could have gone and then asks him about his feelings for Vermeil. Just then, Alto wakes up and picks up a book to read. Vermeil wakes up shortly and asks Alto why he was up. Alto lies and tells her he wants to study for the upcoming bronze exam. Vermeil laughs maniacally and drags Alto to her unclad body. Then, she kisses him again as usual and kisses some mana out of his mouth. The following day, Alto gets back to the library to search for some text. There, he finds the book Vermeil was sealed in earlier on and retrieves it. As he checks through it, Vermeil calls him. Alto quickly hides the book in his bag and gets back to his familiar. Then, the duo join Lilia, Marx, Cheryl, and other students from other schools at the exam venue to observe the bronze practical exam. After joking around on their way, the lot finally arrived at the practical exam venue. The proctor for the exam, Colonel Phalanx, from the Royal Mage Corps, arrives just in time to explain the specifics of the practical test to them. To pass the test, the students would have to fill a certain crystal with mana large enough to increase the flame's intensity in the middle of the crystal. Other students underestimate the dexterity of the test. However, Lilia, Alto, and the others suspect there's more to the test than meets the eye. The proctor explains a few more details about the test to Alto and his people. When he's done, he starts the test. The first student to try out the test completely underestimates it. He pours out all his mana he's got but can't get the flame bright enough to pass the test. The proctor ends his session and calls on the others to try their luck. The first dozen students or so fail the test miserably. Then, it's Lilia's turn to do the test. Being the 97th person and the first person from the Ordija Magic Academy, Lilia knows she has to make a good first impression on the crowd. She thinks long and hard about the task at hand and decides to focus all her mana on the center of the crystal, where the actual flame is. She summons her familiar, which is a wind spirit, and urges her to assist her in mana transference. The duo give the test all they've got and eventually manage to make the flame bigger than it originally was. Everyone, including the proctor, is impressed at Lilia's analytical skills and commends her bravado in making the flame bigger. Up next, a weird dude with a dragon familiar is called upon to do the test. The guy gloats a little about the test and eventually manages to make it big like Lilia's own. Up next, Cheryl is called to do the test. She passes the test easily and walks back to the line. Marx is next, and he struggles to make the flame only a few times bigger than it originally was. After all the performances, the proctor is still not impressed with their performances, almost like he's expecting more than the ordinary to happen. After a few more trials, Alto and his familiar, Vermeil, are called upon to try their luck. This time, Alto takes his time to analyze the crystal lattice structure so he can determine the weakest spots in the crystal structure so he can take advantage of it and pour the most mana in. The proctor is a little impressed at Alto's analysis, but he waits to find out just how far Alto's willing to go to get things done. Alto doesn't disappoint either as he quickly discovers the weakest point in the crystal lattice. This time, the proctor is shocked that Alto could figure out the test in just a few minutes. Alto, after finding the right spot, with Vermeil's help, of course, pours all of his golden mana into it and creates a bright purple flame. The proctor is both shocked and happy at the same time. Alto receives more help from Vermeil and pours out even more mana into the crystal. The mana intensity in the crystal gets so large that the crystal cracks and breaks to pieces. Alto looks at the proctor's face and starts to apologize for breaking the crystal and messing things up for people. He sheepishly asks the proctor if he passes the test or not. Pharynx, however, tells him that he passes with flying colors. Alto's face suddenly brightens up as he returns to his friends. After he's gone, the proctor smiles as his interest in the second-year student, Alto, spikes. Moments after the whole test, Alto and his friends go out to get a light lunch. There, they discuss the next part of the test, which is the theory part. Marx boasts of his secret weapon and tells his friends that the pen will help him pass the test no matter what happens. Everyone ignores him, and Cheryl tells the group about a weirdo that's rumored to have gotten every question in the bronze, gold, and silver tests correctly. Lilia expresses shock at the existence of such a thing and gets a little demotivated from the news. However, Vermeil boosts their morale and tells them to study hard so they can pass the test in no time. The whole team joins hands to work hard and become the best versions of themselves. After their lunch break, Alto and his familiar go to another corner to kiss and exchange mana. Alto stops midway and asks Vermeil to let him go write his test. However, Vermeil couldn't let him go just yet. She continues kissing him until she's gotten her fill of mana. Once they're done, they return to the classroom. On their way there, they run into the cocky boy from earlier and stop to check him out. As Alto and his familiar play around, the cocky boy gets to the bathroom. After washing his hands, he complains a little about the cocky Ortega dudes. He turns his back and finds Lawlight there with him. Lawlight the Menace stabs the guy and steals his name card. Elsewhere, Jessica and Alina from the student council practice a little fencing before returning to class. Then, the duo hit the shower to clean up. There, Alina and Jessica discuss Vermeil and her master. Jessica feels something awry going on with Vermeil, but Alina, who seems to have a sinister plan in mind, tells Jessica to calm down and wait for Alto's love for Vermeil to put him in trouble. She has a plan in mind and they will have to wait for the plan to be fulfilled. As the test begins, Alto and his familiar stop their kissing session and race towards the place to get the test in time. As Alto settles down to write his test, Lawlight arrives with the cocky dude's name tag and sits near Alto to write the bronze test. As Alto writes his bronze test, Vermeil sits outside and waits for him. As she mumbles and complains about the boredom, some students pass by jesting about the toughness of the exam. Hearing them, Vermeil smiles and trusts her master to kill the test. However, she gets too bored and throws a fit for the exam to be done quickly. Meanwhile, Alto has trouble answering some questions. He checks near him and finds Lawlight sleeping through the test. Surprised, Alto ignores the guy and focuses on his own questions next. At one point in the exam, he finds questions meant for a silver square exam. With only 30 minutes left in the exam, Lawlight wakes up and answers all the questions in a minute. Then, he turns to Alto to check on what he's been doing. One of the invigilators finds the two talking and calls them to order. This annoys Lawlight as he confronts the teacher for interrupting their discussion. Alto tries to call him to order, but Lawlight tells him to keep calm and wait for his big surprise. Just then, another teacher rushes into the room to report the untimely death of the cocky students. By then, Lawlight reveals his true self and destroys the entire classroom as he summons a big stone golem. The mages present there try to stop him, but Lawlight stamps his hands down. Soon, Pharynx and Vermeil join the fight and manage to subdue Lawlight. Vermeil asks Alto for some power and he gives it to her willingly. They try all the magic abilities in their arsenal but still can't bring him down. During a pause in the battle, Pharynx recognizes Lawlight as the prodigy who's also the youngest platinum mage ever. Alto suddenly remembers Cheryl's words about the guy who passed the exam with flying colors. This makes him get more serious about the fight with the bozo. Lawlight, who seems to be having fun, summons cannons from his stone golem and readies them to be fired. Right outside the building, Lilia, Cheryl, and Marks try to force their way into the test venue so they can find their dear friend, Alto. Despite the resistance, Lilia still manages to break through the guards to enter the building. A bunch of other guards follow suit only to find themselves outside the building again. They all conclude that the building has been put under transference magic which prevented them from entering the room. Little did they know that Koharu was just outside the magical barrier staring at them. The fight against Lawlight keeps on getting intense as Lawlight fires his cannons everywhere. When he's done destroying all the walls of the classroom, he captures Vermeil and teleports the entire class into another dimension. Lawlight captures Vermeil and gloats about his own power to the others. Alto, who's thought to be down and unable to move, gets up and orders Lawlight to release his girlfriend. Normally, Lawlight refuses to do such a thing. So, Alto gets really pissed this time and creates an aura of golden mana around his body using his own mana. Then, he shoots plasma beams at Lawlight's golem and destroys a part of it. Lawlight frowns his face and pins Alto down with one of his spikes. Then, he inches closer to him and lets Alto know their mission. Apparently, Lawlight and his team plan to destroy the world using Vermeil's huge powers. Alto gets super duper pissed this time and breaks free from his restraint. Lawlight urges him to calm down and then slams him into the ground. Vermeil powers up as well and gets closer to Lawlight, hoping to bring him down. However, Lawlight knocks her out. Alto gets back up and condemns Lawlight for using his genius for something so evil and vile. Lawlight, who's already made his resolve, fires a white plasma beam at Alto. This time, something blocks the beam and leaves surprises on everyone's face. Just then, the book Vermeil was sealed and floats out of Alto's bag and the woman from Alto's dreams appeared earlier. She introduces herself as the mage who sealed Vermeil. Lawlight asks her why she appeared at that instant. The woman laughs and tells him she's nothing but an apparition of the real person who sealed her away. Alto gets defensive and demands the reason why she sealed Vermeil off in the book. The woman giggles a little and decides to show Alto the entire truth. She makes a magic circle on Vermeil and then asks to make sure Alto's ready to see anything. Alto tells her he's ready to find out about his beloved. Lawlight tries to stop them from getting into Vermeil's memory, but the woman is faster than him. She takes out a key and unlocks the door to Vermeil's memories. She then takes herself and Alto to the kingdom of Ortega 550 years ago. During that time, Vermeil was still a young and happy girl with a bright future ahead of her. Alto's very shocked at how innocent his girlfriend looks at that point as he gets more interested in learning what happened that made her the way she is now. As it turns out, Vermeil used to stay in an orphanage with a nun and her friend, the cook. Alto looks at her in surprise as he never thought she was ever happy in her life. That afternoon, Vermeil was just getting back from her errand. She finds the nun sitting there somewhere and hugs her. Later on, the orphan kids all rush in to hug the sister and they all have a good time. Moments later, Vermeil gets down to eat some of the nice breakfast stew that Miel, the cook, cooked for them. After enjoying a delicious breakfast, she compliments Miel on the deliciousness of the stew and teases her a little bit. Soon, her other friends, Lynn and Kate, join in the fun and they all chat about how great life is to them. At that point, the woman in white explains the kind of happiness Vermeil felt with her then family. Alto just keeps on staring in surprise as days turn to weeks and months. One day, when Vermeil was old enough, her demon horns began to grow. The nun combs her hair and lets her know there's nothing wrong with the horns on her head. She even tells Vermeil that she's always going to be a part of their family no matter what anybody says to her. Alto is shocked that the sister didn't turn on Vermeil even after finding out she was a demon. The woman in white explains to him that the sister then was a saint ordained by God himself and wasn't allowed to do anything short of that. Alto, however, senses that something wrong is about to happen. The woman takes him up on his thoughts and shows him the beginning of the end for Vermeil. As soon as the other kids found out about Vermeil's horns, they began stoning her and calling her hurtful names. One day, after being harassed, Miel arrives and finds her little girl crying silently. She chases the bullies away and bends down to check on Vermeil. She sees the horns and turns back a little bit. Vermeil tries to explain herself to her, but the lady walks towards her and hugs her. Surprised, Vermeil asks her why she did such a thing. Miel tells her it's because she was and always will be a part of their family. A few months later, the entire village turned on Vermeil. They all gather in front of the orphanage and demand that the sisters surrender Vermeil to them for bringing a plague to their little village. The villagers blamed her for the disease that took their loved ones away. The sister and Miel try their best to quell the growing unrest, but the villagers turn a deaf ear to her. At this point, there was nothing they could do anymore. Before the impossible happens, Miel holds Vermeil and asks her to run away from the city and never come back. She tells Vermeil that they will meet up with her in a few days' time. Knowing fully well this was a lie, Miel hugs Vermeil and says her final goodbyes with tears in her eyes. Vermeil believes her and promises to get back once she's grown big enough to protect them. Lynn and Kate all hug their dear sister and watch her run away from them. Vermeil only makes it to the outskirts. She falls and quickly rushes to hide as she overhears the angry villagers searching everywhere for her. She remembers her people and decides to get back to the inn and fight for her rights. If only she didn't do such a thing. Anyways, little Vermeil musters up the courage to stand up and get back to the inn. Sadly, when she gets there, she finds all her former family members hanging on a tree branch as the angry villagers take their lives to satisfy their rage. Vermeil couldn't believe her eyes as she inches closer to her people, hoping to wake them up and get back to her normal reality. Sadly, that reality was long gone. Vermeil crashes to the ground and loses control of her powers. She becomes the demon everybody painted her to be and kills every single one of the villagers who came for her. Her rage gets so out of control that she even blows a huge crater on the floor. Alto looks very sad as he understands the unjust way of life Vermeil has been made to live. Rather than leave her be, Alto gets down to young Vermeil and speaks to her. Young Vermeil fails to recognize who this bright young man is to her. Nonetheless, she tells the man that she's done something very bad to the people of her village. Alto gets closer to her and hugs her with a smile on his face. Just then, Vermeil grows bigger and cries her heart out to her master. She tells Alto that she doesn't deserve to be happy as she always makes bad things happen to people around her. Alto holds her hands and promises to always be by her side. He expresses his love for her and tells her he'll be by her side forever. Then, he plants a kiss on her lips and gets out of the memories with her. As they get out of the memories, Vermeil's shackles break free and she holds her master's hands with tears on her face. Alto professes his love for her and promises to always be there for her, no matter what happens. Lawlight is a little surprised at what just happened. Vermeil and her master, Alto, just broke through a mythic level lock item. Still, he summons a magical centurion to help him capture the demon, Vermeil. Before fighting them, he undermines Vermeil's existence, calling her a waste of space and an abomination to the earth she was born on. Alto stops him in his speech and lets him know that although Vermeil may be born a demon, she has never acted like one. She's kind-hearted and is on the right path. Lawlight laughs like a madman and prepares his centurion to fight. At this point, Vermeil and Alto merge their powers together and manage to take down the centurion. Seeing this, Lawlight decides to get serious with them. He activates his own purple magic aura and gets ready to do something really bad. Thankfully, Koharu arrives just in time to stop him. According to her, people were already gathering outside and, to avoid any hindrance to their plan, they had to go. She opens a portal and urges Lawlight to pass through it. Alto demands to know what their plans are before he allows them to go. However, Lawlight ignores him and leaves. Just then, the woman in white appears to Alto and entrusts Vermeil in his hands before she disappears forever. Before allowing her to leave, Alto promises to be there for Vermeil till he dies. The woman in white smiles and urges Vermeil to leave that dimension and get back to their normal lives. She gives Vermeil one last smile and says her goodbyes. Almost immediately, the whole school building returned to its original state. Alto finds the book Vermeil was sealed in on the floor and picks it up. He then gives it to Vermeil, who holds the book close to her heart. Lilia rushes in to see her Alto. She lets out a cry of joy as the others join in to see their friend. Later on, Alto starts his sword training with Jessica. Jessica makes an absolute mess of him and then scolds him for being weak. Chris arrives shortly and then takes over. This time, she pins Alto down to the ground and lets him know that he lacks enough experience to make it in the magic world. After the entire training, Jessica and Chris ask him why he wants to get strong so badly. Alto recalls the promise he made to the woman in white and then explains it to Jessica and Chris. After hearing all he had to say, Jessica blushes a little and Chris laughs at Alto. That night, Alto takes charge and kisses Vermeil this time. Vermeil is a little shocked at Alto's manliness, so she stops halfway to tell Alto that her chest is throbbing. Alto immediately asks to show her everything. Vermeil sheepishly opens her chest and shows Alto everything under there. By midnight, Vermeil wakes Alto up to tell him the state of her heart ever since he confessed his love for her. She thanked him dearly for being there for her even when she wasn't to be trusted. Alto smiles and tells her not to ever doubt his love for her. He has and will always love her. Hearing this, Vermeil gets very emotional. Alto acts like a man for once and takes charge once again to end the night on a good note. The following day, Vermeil and her master attend a meeting with the Student Union Council. There, they discuss the recent happenings that have been harming their school and students. They all make a promise to get to the bottom of things and fish out the bad guys doing such vile things to their students and their familiars. Alto and Vermeil also join in on their plan. Up next, Lilia, Cheryl, and Marx all get their results from the bronze exams. After checking them, they find out that they all passed with flying colors. Alto, on the other hand, is seen having his time alone with the wonderful Vermeil, who is more than happy to finally be with someone who understands her. To end the season, Vermeil kisses her master after they promise each other once again to always be there for each other.